Thank you. Thank you. I want to ask a question. A young lady back there said accidentally she got into wedding photography. And that happened with me, the same thing. In this business, you get labeled. And I was a sports photographer. And within that labeling, you can be even more specific. I'm a hockey photographer. Then I became a tennis photographer because I did a book on hockey, and the same publisher asked me to photograph the US Open. This was in 1971. So I had never seen a tennis match. I mean, I had heard of Billie Jean King and Rod Laver and Rosie Casals because that was on, you know, you'd hear them on the radio. But I didn't know what they did. I mean, I knew they played tennis, but I didn't know what tennis was all about. So I was fortunate in this sense because I did everything wrong right. I used a 1,000mm lens, which I handheld. It was a Nikon mirror lens, so it was big, but you could handhold it. Focusing it was another problem. It was a fixed f11. Sorry? Oh. Yeah, it was a fixed f11, so you really had to shoot mostly Tri-X with it, though I did shoot some Kodachrome, and that's a bit daring. And that daring gave me an opportunity to make some mistakes, and they came out extremely well. So anyway, to make a long story short, I got sucked into tennis. I really like tennis very much. So I started traveling around on the tour, and one of the executives from Virginia Slims was getting married, and she wanted me to photograph the wedding. I said, Jeannie, I don't do weddings. I mean, I wouldn't know where the heck to start. She says, I love your work. I want you to shoot my wedding. I said, okay. I said, but this is an important day in your life, and if I screw it up, I'm going to be embarrassed. She says, I'll take my chances. I shot the wedding, and it was okay. It wasn't great, but I told her, I said, I'm only shooting it in black and white. I'm not going to shoot it in color. It's fine. So I shot it in black and white. She was very pleased with it. I didn't know what to make of it. It was acceptable to me because all the exposures were correct. But that was it. There was nothing inventive or creative about it, nothing daring. 10 years later, another woman comes to me and said, I saw Jeannie Brinkman's photographs. I want you to photograph my wedding. I said, I haven't done weddings. I'm not a wedding photographer. I almost got into an argument with this woman that had recommended me. So she says, I'm going to have Karen call you. Karen is the woman who's getting married. She's an Australian. And I'm a sucker for that accent, right? So we had a great talk, and I said, okay, I'll shoot your wedding. I said, but no color. She says, maybe just a little. I said, okay, one roll of color, all posed. I will take the film out of the camera and give you the film, and you do what you want with the film. That was it. The wedding, I shot, everything else I shot in black and white, and it was sensational. Accidentally sensational, because I had nothing specific in mind. And what I do when I do shoot weddings is I explain to the kids, and they're generally kids that are getting married, that there will be the obligatory posed photographs right after the service, whether it's a Jewish service or a Protestant or a Catholic service. The minute the priest or the rabbi says, I now pronounce you man and wife, at that point, I assign the bridesmaids. I said, you get the bride's family together, groom, you get the groom's family together. Don't let them leave. I don't want to wait and say, oh, Uncle Joe's not here. You make sure everybody's there. We go up on the altar or wherever. We take a bunch of color posed photographs, and I say color because in the old days I had to use Kodachrome. Now you're using digital, so you have your choice. You want to shoot color, leave it. Shoot it in color. If you want it black and white, you throw a switch on the computer and says desaturate, and you desaturate it. So that's the way I work. The pose photographs, we get them over. The one thing I don't want to do is I don't want to control the wedding. Wedding photographers do that. I am not a wedding photographer, but I've shot over 100 weddings. And I don't accept that term wedding photographer, because then everybody says, oh, this is what he does, you know, and he makes proof sheets, and I don't do that. After I shoot the wedding, I put everything on a DVD, and I explained in advance. I said, I hope you have a computer that can open these raw files, and you have Photoshop. And you go, yes. And if they can't, they know somebody who can. That's fine. I give them the wedding. Because I don't want to be bothered making prints. I don't want to be in the wedding business. I want to be in the art business. I want to take artful photographs that when you go over somebody's house and they go, oh, you got to see our wedding portfolio. How many groans do you hear? At least you hear one from me when somebody says, oh, you got to see my wedding. You pick it up and you go, oh God, yeah, wow. Whew. Everybody's standing there like that, smiling, artificial, and there's no life in there. So I'm shooting for two people. I'm shooting for the bride and groom. That's one people, actually. And then I'm shooting for myself. And that's why I get hired. Because people say, I want your vision. I want your black and white, and I want it artful. Fine. We got the obligatory pose photographs out of the way. Now go have a good time. I don't want to go into the, what the hell is it? The, I'm sorry, say again, louder.
The reception.
Exactly. I don't want to go into that. I don't want to cut into their time. This is the bride's day. Not my day, it's the bride's day. Go ahead and have a good time. One bride summed it up for me. She said, my wedding was a blur. I never saw my wedding. She said, you were my witness. You saw my wedding and you showed it to me. And that was a big compliment for me. I was pleased with that. So that's the way I work. Wedding photographers don't work like that. They have a formula. Whether it's good or bad, that's up to you, whether you like what they're doing. The one thing I'm not crazy about is I've been to friends' weddings where you had a wedding photographer and then he had two assistants. You know, one was over on that side of the room, one was on this side of the room, and everybody's shooting. I only want one vision, mine. I want, when you pick up that portfolio of theirs that they make, and they turn the pages, they know this was shot by one guy. That's all. When you have three people shooting the wedding, I don't think you get that same vision. And again, I'm not being critical of that, because some people like that, and they want it. That's fine. They're paying for it. So we'll start off with some pictures. Now, the other thing is, how many people know what propinquity means? Let's see some hands. Oh my God, we're gonna have to. Propinquity. It means closeness. It means near, okay? That's me. This is where I shoot when I'm shooting. I'm shooting in here. I'm not back here with a zoom going, oh yeah, there's a great shot. I get a tight shot of the guy's head. If I want a tight shot of this gentleman's head, I come in here and I take it. I do that because I want the physical nature of that. I mean, what I'm doing here is I'm taking this entire class and I'm putting them right there at that wedding. You can reach out and touch these kids. And that's what I want to do. I want to make you, the viewer, part of this scene. So I get close. I use wide angle lenses. I don't get a distortion because I hold it level. That's kind of silly, isn't it? That's the bride's mother and some crazy photographer shooting into a mirror with a flash. I want the picture to be a little more interesting than just some girl, you know, who's got her bathrobe on talking to somebody. The mafioso on the left is a good friend of mine, and I just love his expression. Now, you may or may not want that in your wedding album, but I want it in my album. That's the other thing. When you're at a wedding, if you want to shoot, you got to pay attention to everything. Now, the action may be behind me, you know, maybe back there, but the most interesting thing is in the foreground of that child and the innocence of him looking through that camera. Another thing I do, I use a 16mm lens on the Canon, and there are times I have the pop flash on. I rarely use the big flash. Times I do. If it's a long throw to the altar, you know, that's not going to reach, so I put the big flash on. But generally speaking, since I'm shooting in here so close, I don't need a big flash. And the reason I don't like the big flash, especially the guys, the wedding photographers that have a big flash and they have this giant globe on the front of it. I mean, how can you be sneaky with that thing? I mean, you can't sneak up on anybody with that thing. I really want to be left alone, and I don't want to be noticed. I used to, and I'm not promoting these things, I used to shoot weddings with a Leica. And that Leica, I looked like an amateur with that, and that's exactly what I wanted. I didn't want them paying attention. This makes me look like a big-time professional. I get this big, ugly hood on, and somebody's going to spot it. I don't want to be noticed. But I use the 16 a lot. And I react very quickly. If I see something, I'll just shoot like that. I won't look through the viewfinder, because basically I know what I'm getting. I've got a 16mm lens on, which when you put it on a 20D becomes a 21. It's not really a 16. It becomes a 21, and I can just, you know, I zone focus with it. Do you know what zone focus is? Yes. Okay, you do, but does everybody else? Raise your hand if you don't. Okay. The 16 and this, there are two infinity symbols. Well, there's one infinity symbol, but there are markings on your lens, say for f16. f16 is like that. It's small, great depth of field. So if you move the infinity symbol to f16, I am in focus from f16. I'm in focus from infinity to 3 feet. So if I don't get closer than 3 feet, I can just shoot like this. You know, if I see something really quickly like that. For me, the problem is if I go like this, if I take the time to move that up, somebody may see it. They'll see this motion. But if I'm just walking around like this and I fire like that, they're not going to escape. And you don't get it all the time, but most of the time you will. And this is what happens. To me, I love the balance in that photograph. You really test the ballast of that photograph by tilting the camera. But the important thing was I wanted that woman's face like that. If I had taken the camera up like this, she would have seen me, her eyes would have come to me, and there's no photograph. There's a photograph. And I look for the relationships between people. And when there's dancing, I'm in the middle of the floor. I'm not standing on the side with a zoom like the wedding photographers. I'm in the middle of the action because I want to bring you, the viewer, with me. And I do that by using the wide-angle lens. And, you know, you study people, you look at people, you watch people, and you wait for an expression, whether it's from the bridesmaid or the bride. You wait for an expression, and here I was lucky I got both expressions, which I enjoyed. This was a pure accident, and I'll take it. The thing for me in this photograph is the guy on the left, way in the corner. Hey, what the hell is he doing there? Because I was more concerned with the girl that was in front of me, and the girl was right behind her that she was talking to. I was waiting for that girl to do something or say something or throw up her arms, or I don't know. I have no idea what she planned. But all of a sudden, this guy pokes his head in the frame, and for me, he makes the picture. I love chaos, and I like making order out of the chaos. So you've got a plot and a subplot, and that's the way I explain it. The plot is the bride in the foreground with the woman reaching up, caressing her cheek, and then the conversation, you know, the animated conversation behind them. So there's a lot to look at, and that's what I want to do, is I want to present to the viewer a lot to look at. And one other thing I don't do, and will never do, is I don't caption my photographs. This is not the Daily News or the Post, where you see a picture of A-Rod hitting a home run, and the caption reads, "A-Rod hits home run." And you go, oh, God, is that right? Geez, I would have never figured that. So I don't want to think for you. I want you to think. I'm there to present a situation for you, and you make up your own mind. You make your own captions. You can say, oh, I like the way this woman looks angry. No, this woman looks happy. I'm not even going to get in there. There's the situation, and you guys figure it out. If I put, you know, bride gets caressed by woman, you know, while her sister in the background argues with the groom. What am I going to do? This is, remember, most of you are not old enough to remember, but when I was a kid, there were these wonderful little books called See Spot Run. And it was Dick and Jane. And Dick and Jane would walk down the street, and they would have a little dog named Spot, and he'd run. And the caption would go, See Spot Run. That's fine when you're 3 and 4 years old, that's okay. But not when you're our age, and somebody's explaining that photograph to what you're looking at. They're telling you, this is what you're looking at. I go, don't tell me what I'm looking at. Let me figure out what I'm looking at. You can say where it was taken. You know, this was taken at the Rialto Hotel in New York City. Boom. That's it. That's fine. It's a Greek wedding. I love Greek weddings. Give me ethnic weddings anytime, because they don't mind people around you. They're used to lots of people around, you know, and they're used to the physical nature of people being around. So I can get in close. Again, if you have a tendency to be shy, get another job. But if you're not afraid of people and you like them, get in the middle of their action. Get in the middle of their action. It takes a certain personality type to get in there and start taking pictures and not having people offended. But find out your own way of doing things. I mentioned this in the last talk, Dorothea Lange. Anybody know who she is besides Brandon? Good boy. Dorothea Lange, you'll know who she is when I tell you. did that wonderful photograph during the Dust Bowl era of the migrant mother. You know, the woman that was standing or sitting holding a child with another child on her lap. And actually you own that photograph because she was paid by the government to go out and photograph the Dust Bowl era. And it's in the Library of Congress. You call the Library of Congress and you want an 8x10 print, they'll say, okay, it's $25 plus shipping, and all of a sudden you have a nice picture of Dorothea Lange, and it's beautiful. They really do a great reproduction. So just as an aside, do you ever want to call the Library of Congress and see what photographs are owned by, come on in, folks. Come on. You know, just call the Library of Congress. You'd be surprised how many photographs you know that you've seen growing up that were paid for by the government with your tax dollars. But Dorothea Lange was asked, especially with this photograph, because she's so physically close to this woman who was so despondent and so concerned for the welfare of her children and where the next meal is coming from. This is the tough thing about being a journalist, and I did this with Newsweek for years. You got to put that camera in somebody's face, and all of a sudden their land has been dispossessed, or they're farmers and they're broke. I did a thing in Iowa on Iowa farmers. These poor guys were desperate. And here I am, oh, well, yeah, I'm sorry to hear about your situation, but let me get a picture of you. I mean, how do you do that? So, and somebody asked that to Dorothea Lange. How do you get so close without being noticed? And she said, simply, I put on my cloak of invisibility. Dorothea Lange was born in Hoboken, New Jersey, right across the river. This is where I'm from. And I was in a thrift shop in Hoboken one day, and I'm walking around, and I see way over in the corner in the back of the thing, there's a cloak hanging up on a peg. So I pick it and I put it on. And all of a sudden I was invisible. And I walked out. I didn't even pay for it. I walked out because nobody saw me. I was invisible. I had on my cloak of invisibility. Now all of this is metaphorical. Your cloak of invisibility is what your personality is. How do you get close? I want to take some pictures of this guy, you know, without getting socked in the nose. How do you do that? How do you walk up to strangers? I mean, you're at a wedding, you don't know anybody there unless it's your family's wedding. But that's one thing I'll recommend. This is where you start, is you invite yourself to people's weddings. You say, look, I've got this camera, I love shooting, I want to be a photographer, or I don't want to be a photographer, but I do like photography. Can I come to your wedding and just take some pictures? Because I need a place to practice. You know, this isn't like baseball. You want to learn how to hit, you get a friend of yours to throw your ball, and you start hitting the ball. In photography, you can't do that. You have to go somewhere. I mean, I'm not saying you can photograph flowers, you don't need any help there. But if you want to do weddings, best thing to do is start off with children's birthday parties, because the kids don't pay any attention to you. They don't care about you. They're interested in whatever they're playing, or the cake, you know, or the ice cream, or stuff like that. That's the beauty of children. It's the adults that, you know, we run into problems because, and I'll be discursive here for a minute. Elsie Bing, I think her name was, photographer in the 40s, wanted to photograph this gentleman who was an artist. And she had come from Hungary, and she's here in the States, and through her connections in the art community, she got to meet this guy. She called him and said, you know, I'm so-and-so, and I'd like to photograph you if you wouldn't mind. Fine. They make an arrangement. She goes down to his house, He shows up, he's got a paper bag, a brown paper bag over his head, and he drew a face on it. And she was startled by this. She didn't know what to make of it. And the point was simple, and he's right. He said, whenever you photograph somebody, they put on a mask. So you have to be sneaky, and you shoot the way I do, from the hip, and you just grab shots when she's not looking. And it's the same thing at weddings. You know, there are people, if they see you, all of a sudden they straighten up and they put their arms around one another and they smile. I don't mind laughter. I love laughter because laughter is spontaneous. It's when people go like that. That's not real. It's not real at all. And if you want to know what real is, pick up the Velveteen Rabbit. It's a child's book that adults should read, because at one point in there, the rabbit asks the skin horse, what is real? And for half a page, he explains what is real. And that'll help you as a photographer, is knowing what is real. I'm sure you know what it is now, but anyway. This was a gigantic success for me. It may not be the greatest photograph in the world, even though I like it a lot, is I've got 3 generations here. And without posing them, you've got the grandmother and grandfather, you got the son and his wife, and a grandchild. There's a family portrait that I like. Rather than sitting 4 or 5 people down, sitting down, okay, ready, 1, 2, everybody smile, no blinking, boop, take the picture. This to me is much more valuable because it's a real situation. I love the scale in this picture. I love the bride in the back, you know, with her 2 sisters in the front, you know, and these big balloon lights. The 4 sisters. I didn't set it up. The disc jockey was holding a microphone, he put it, and they were all singing along with it. And it's a triumph. They love this photograph. Amy, do you recognize them?
Yep, it's on their fridge.
They're great. This was one of the best weddings. Amy, I think you should renew your vows now that you've met me. And Kiki, and again, scale is important to me. You've got this dominant figure in the foreground, you know, and people in the background, something interesting to look at. I love this. This is a good friend of mine, Michael Albanese's son, Matthew, and his crazy fiance, or actually wife at that point. This is not at a wedding, but an anniversary, 50th anniversary of these 2 people, you know. And for me, I'm interested in the emotions in here. You've got 2 people that are very seriously in love, you know, and behind them is their son, and, you know, he's not joining that party for some reason. Sir?
Did you say you shoot at f/16 or 22? I forgot what you said.
The question, Matt, was he asked if I shoot at f/16. Yeah, I do. Not f/16 as much as f/11. I'm more comfortable with f/11. And I've worked my style into f/11. And I'm in focus from infinity to 3 feet at 200 ASA. Generally, I like shooting at 100 ASA, and I'll drop it down to f/8. But f/11 gives me a little more depth of field.
Just with one flash on the camera?
Just the pop flash on the camera.
And how did you expose that 2 couple that when the background and foreground, both exposures were identical?
Oh.
Did you do that Photoshop?
Did any of you grow up in a dark room? Yeah, okay.
Dodge and burn.
You guys are lucky. You guys are really lucky, because when you get into Photoshop, you know what a good print looks like. You know what dodging and burning is, and cropping. Yeah, it's in Photoshop because the exposure is going to be different.
Right.
And the one thing I like about shooting in RAW, there's that one slider that says fill light. I'll slide that over and that background will come up.
Yep.
And then that means I have to burn the foreground just a little bit.
It sounds to me like you're pretty much a wide-angle lens guy. Do you ever pull out a long lens during
Yeah.
a wedding?
Yeah, I have a 70 to 200.
All right.
And it depends upon some of the priests, you
Yeah,
know.
if you're in
And
the same
this
forest,
is
they won't let you get up that
yeah,
close.
this is my own church, right? You know, in the Catholic Church, priest said to me once, "You take one step past that altar railing, you're excommunicated." Yeah. Thank you, Father. Thank you very much. And I tell them my cousin's a Jesuit, means nothing. Don't go past that line. Then I've got Father Brian at my church. I said, you know, what are the rules? Where's he says,
Flash.
no. Father Brian says, do whatever you want. Do whatever you want. I trust you. Do whatever you want. I was behind him, literally, but on the side so I could, and I'm not going to be running around. I'm just going to stay there because I don't want the audience to be distracted by watching me. I want them to watch the service. And I'm there, and I will occasionally use the flash. Most of the time in a situation like that, I'd rather not, because then I'm going to attract the audience to me. So I'll shoot with the 70 to 200 zoom, and I can crop in real tight at the bride who's about to cry, you know, and I can't walk up there, so I use the zoom, and I'll shoot at 800 or 1600. So you got to do that.
Yeah, the reason I have resist the pop-up flash with the large lens is you get this huge shadow, which you see here, and it looks like you're deliberately using that as part of the composition, as a compositional element. You're creating a negative space border around the picture because you have, partly because you're using a pop-up flash with the lens cap. You're going to get.
That's right. That's exactly it.
So I would
Well,
suggest
on the
that maybe
16,
you're
on the
using-
16, you've got that silly thing that is over, and you're right.
Yeah.
And this is what you get.
Right.
But that
I
doesn't
mean,
bother.
avoid that, but you're deliberately
I know that
using it.
that doesn't bother me. That technical part of the photograph doesn't bother me. This is what's important to me.
Seems to me that having a background in sports photography has been really good for you because when you're shooting sports, you can't afford to stop and think about it.
Oh no.
You really just
Right.
have to be in the moment and just
Right.
really follow what's going on.
Well, look for my book. Eventually, I'm going to do a book called "The Best Seat in the House," and that's for shooting 41 U.S. Opens. You know, I got the best seat in the house. There are guys behind me that are working in corporate boxes that they paid $250,000 for 4 seats. I got a better seat than they do. I'm in front of them. Nobody can get in front of me.
And you're getting paid to do it.
Well, no, not when you're freelancing. When you're freelancing, you hope you're gonna, you know, you can make some living. Let me see. I wrote down some other things. Art is the only way to run away from home without leaving. Creativity is allowing to make mistakes. Art is knowing which ones to keep. Scott Adams. Photography is another way of keeping a diary. And this one I really love because you have to think about it a little bit. Coloring outside the lines is a fine art. And basically what this woman, Kim Nance, is saying, forget the rules. Don't worry about the rules. The rules are restrictive. You want to break them, see what happens. But don't be afraid to take chances. Like here. I don't know of a wedding photographer that would shoot this because he'd wait for the girl's face to come out or something like that. I just wanted this subliminal. And the other thing that I'll do is if there are some things around them that are showing up, like in the distance, I eliminate them. I get them out of there. Same thing here. There was a lot of things going around this woman. And I said, I just want the woman. I just want that expression. And I don't want the chair or somebody holding a drink that's behind her. I eliminate them. And you do that in Photoshop. In the darkroom, it was more difficult. But in Photoshop, it's relatively simple. Here's the thing that I look for more than anything, and I love, is shooting in natural light. I don't have to use the pop flash. I don't have to use any flash. I just want to shoot natural light, and I want to be a fly on the wall. And the other thing is, I will ask every bride if I can photograph the preparation that she's going through, the makeup, the hair, you know, putting on a dress or something like that. If she's embarrassed with having a man in there while she's doing that, fine, I will leave, and then please call me back when you're finished. Some brides say yes, some brides say no. I'd much rather be there, not because I'm a voyeur. I just want to be there when something's happening, and I don't want to miss it. I love secondary mirrors.
You set that up, didn't you?
I did. All I did was I had her come in and stand there. You're right.
That's great.
Because I knew it would make an interesting portrait. Here's where I ran into trouble. That's the same girl. The father has his hand on a railing. I couldn't act quickly enough, and I blew it. But what I should have done was to lean out a little further and got them in the mirror, you know, and themselves. So I would have had 4 images. 4 inches, I don't know. But if I had leaned out, maybe the father would have looked at me, so who knows. And I love heroic angles. I love keeping the camera low and shooting up. Again, you can't get much closer to these guys, and I don't care about, you know, cropping off part of their head or part of their arm. I mean, all of that stuff is more of a concern to a wedding photographer that, you know, wants the frame filled with that. I don't care about that. You know, the minimalist proportions are fine with me. Boy, she can't wait for him to say, "What are you doing the rest of the evening?" I don't know why. I don't know about you guys, but this is what kills me, is that hand up there. I love the shape of that hand.
On that last photograph, you cropped that in the camera? That's what you saw?
That's full frame. Full frame. I'm getting in close. You know, I don't have any concern about getting only a part of this woman.
I like it, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, so do I.
See, sometimes I find pictures within pictures, but if you saw that in the frame, amazing.
Yeah. Now, I got a bad hip. You see the way I walk. It's hard for me to bend until I get this damn hip operated on. So I'll shoot from down here, you know, because I want to get on that level. I want to get a little lower. Somebody was saying that the gentleman back there was saying that he photographs his children, but they're older now. But when they were younger and they were playing on the rug, did you get down on the rug and photograph them?
Absolutely. Sometimes laid flat on the floor.
Good. You passed. Don't worry. You get an A for that remark. Because if I had a nickel for everybody that I go into their house, they're going, "Oh, look at that." What do you mean, look at that? Get down. Don't press that button until you look whatever you're shooting right in the eye, whether it's a dog, a cat, or a child. You want to be on their level. Do not point that camera down. You can point the camera up. That's another story. But pointing it down doesn't make any sense. Any questions about this?
How much were you dragging the shutter?
Very good. You got the right answer. I dragged the shutter on that. And by dragging the shutter, for those of you who don't understand it, is once you go down to about a 15th or an 1/8, and you're moving the camera, which I like doing, and it's a guess. You don't know what you're going to get, but you're going to try and get something. So I try, and you know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You know, the key to this photograph for me is the woman's expression, the simpatico expressed there. I love Brenda's hand. One reason is, look at these. I can't play basketball, but she can with those hands. She's got great hands. Oh, let me go back to this again. One of the things I like about this is its lack of formal nature. You know, it's not particularly square and everything is formally set up in there. It's tilted a little bit. And it makes it a little more interesting to me. This is not a wedding, it's a bar mitzvah. And these are the places you can practice. If you're a guest at a bar mitzvah or a confirmation or a child's party, bring your camera, and that's the place to practice and play. Because you're under no obligation, and you're not going to mess anything up, but you are going to learn. You know, right time, right place, and you know, it was a lucky shot. But I think it was Madame Curie that said, "Chance favors the prepared mind." Yes, sir.
I forgot what you said. What lens? Focal length?
16 on the Canon. If you put
That's a 16 on a Canon?
no, this is a 21 on the Canon. But when you put it on the 20D, since it's not a full frame, the 16 goes to a 21. The 21 on the 20D goes up a bit to, I don't know what, 28? Brandon would know that better than me.
Is that why her head is not ballooning? Distorting?
Another one I have no idea. I just know that's the way it looked and it was fine. Again, in order to avoid that situation, I hold the camera as straight as possible and almost as straight as possible, you know, in the woman. Had I moved in and gotten closer to her, it probably would have ballooned at that point.
How close were you actually to them, you estimate?
Oh, I'm pretty damn close. I'm about 4 feet. You know, the guy on the left has no real bearing in the picture, and yet, if you took him out of it, I don't think it's as interesting a moment. So I don't mind. You know, I didn't move over or move in further just to get the kids. Man, I just love pictures like this. I don't know how you guys feel about them, but I just love these moods because they really reach out and touch you. This gentleman, do they still sell stuff to make your hair look like that?
I just saw a guy coming here that was standing in a. I wish I had my camera with me because he had it gelled up like this, like
Oh,
20-something. Looked like an Elvis throwback.
They don't make them like that anymore, and I applaud it. I love them. You know, a guy like that, I think you almost have to go up to him and say, "Hey, listen, you really are a very interesting gentleman. I'd love to take your picture." Or however else you want to work out how you're going to take some. I mean, look, what did Diane Arbus do?
I was just thinking that.
You know, she just walked up to complete strangers, you know, and would take their pictures. It's not like Gary Winogrand, who was shooting like me, tilting the camera and grabbing quick shots. She would actually stand them up, pose them, you know, and with a twin. Yeah, exactly. Like you know something? You mentioned the twins.
Yeah, I love it.
Find Louis Faurer's book, Faurer. He's got twins on the cover that rival Diane Arbus's photographs. And Louis Faurer is one of my favorite photographers, but nobody knows who the hell he is, except, you know, the cognoscenti, if you will. I remember I called Howard Greenberg once, who owns a beautiful gallery here in New York. If you want to see great photographs, go to Howard's place. And I called him and I said, Howard, geez, I'd love to meet Louis Farah. This is, I guess, about 15 years ago. He said, he's one of my favorite photographers. I mean, I've learned so much by standing on his shoulders. And he said, Mel, he says, your timing is off. He said, he's pretty well gone. And he was being polite. And he says, this is not Louis Farah anymore. So I missed, but I really wanted to meet him. And there's a guy running around New York City called Bill Cunningham. Brandon knows him better than anybody because Brandon's always photographing him. And he's a peripatetic photographer. He's all over the city. And they, you can go on YouTube and look at the video they made of him. And I think it's wonderful. It's a great video. I think the next guy they should do is Barton Silverman, who works for the New York Times, who's as good a photographer in sports as he is in just photojournalism. A real hard-working guy and a damn good photographer. Cesar Di Liberto, I had to give you his name. Cesar's a great guy and a crazy guy. I love situations like this that don't really, you know the expression, the camera doesn't lie? Well, the camera doesn't lie. It's photographers who lie because nothing's happening there. But it looks like a tense situation. I just got one of those existential moments where I popped into a situation where it looks something entirely different than what's really going on. This is right before the wedding at the bride's home. Yeah, I posed her. Yeah, I did. And you would have too, man. You see a beautiful little child like this, you pick a neutral wall with nothing behind it, and just say, stand there, just look at the camera. No expression, please. I don't want you to smile, like that. Just look at the camera. And let the countenance reveal who she is. Again, it's one of those situations where nothing really happened. Something dropped on the floor, but look at the concern on everybody's face. It's so dramatic. And that's what you're there for, is to take these little snippets out, whether they're true or not true, and look at it this way. Okay, it's not true, right? What is true is beauty, is truth, and that's beautiful. So if somebody says, well, that's really not true, quiet. This was a great wedding. He's a great guy. I enjoyed his family very much. Ooh, I love it. Look at this guy. He is really giving her something, and you see how concerned she is about this nonsense that he's giving her? This picture was made on the computer. And I say made on the computers. Okay, you've got the kids in the foreground, perfectly exposed and nice. But I had to open up everything in the background to get that feeling of motion that is surrounding them. And don't forget the hands, don't just go for the faces. Those hands in the dominant foreground, to me, are very important. And then it fades off into, that's what happens when you photograph the older people that think they know how to dance to today's music, You know, the kids know how to do it, but the older ones, you know, you got to give them an A for effort, though. And I'm not going to miss a shot like this. You know, there are a lot of people just look at that and they go, oh, those girls are having a good time. This is a time for me to jump in there and get that shot. You know, and not, every once in a while, it's rare that I'll get captivated by a situation and I'll forget and I go, wake up, idiot, you're a photographer, take that picture. You know, but generally I don't miss things like that. Because
are you shooting black and white, or you have your camera set in black and white, or do you have a color and you desaturate afterwards?
no, always desaturate afterwards, for one reason. You never know, 1 out of every 50 or even 100 photographs works better in color. I don't want to be able to miss that, because I can always go over to the black and white. But once, if I set that camera for black and white,
You're done.
yeah, I'm limited. So I have an option. Again, you've got a plot and a subplot. The girl in the foreground is really, you know, entertaining you, but I love the people on the left over there because there's some real concern in there. So for me, there's movement in that picture. Even though it's static, there's movement because your eye is going back and forth. And that's what you try and look for, is look for subplots. And I love it when people walk in front of my camera, because you always get, oh, I'm sorry, did I miss it? Don't worry about it. I want that. I invite it because I'm ready. And to me, it's a lovely picture of the bride, but I think what really makes it is that blur. I like it when a hand comes in, and that's all you see is a hand and the subject. You know, these disparate elements. Now, this is where you have to be paying attention. I'm concentrating on the bride and groom dancing, and all of a sudden I see the waitress 10 feet down coming with this. I said, let me reframe this. So I move over, got the bride and groom, and I wait for the woman, and that's what makes the photograph. As these two are locked in an embrace, and
Hey, what did I do?
but see, that's the caption, but
Right.
that's valid for you, and I want that from you. But you want to know the truth? It's not a matter of that. He gets headaches because he has a plate in his head. He's a cop. He's got a plate in his head, and I think it was during the service that he might have gotten that. And Frankie's just sitting there, and he's relaxing, and he's just trying to get his act together. But if you don't know that story, you're going to say, oh boy, what did I do? What did I get into? You know, whatever. Same guy. Anybody know Larry Fink in here? Yeah, you would do it. Larry Fink is, for me, a great photographer. I love Larry's work. I sent him this picture, and he was teaching at Yale, and he hung it up in his classroom, which to me was a big deal. Again, there's a lot going on in here. You know, you got these women in the foreground, and then you got this little huddle in the background of the bride. That's my daughter on the extreme right, and her starstruck husband. This was great. This is the bride's mother, and she was really, really very silly, and I loved her. Now, there's a mystery in here, because the fellow in the glass is not the fellow in the photograph, but the woman in the glass is the woman in the photograph. And that's how these things refract light. And I'm saying, take your chances. When you're at a wedding, you know, shoot through glasses and see what happens. You know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but at least give it a shot. It's not a manufactured photo, it's a straight photo. but it's a dragged shutter. And that's why you get that physical feeling and the movement. And what I like doing is, this was at the rehearsal. Was it the rehearsal? No, it wasn't at the rehearsal dinner. It was another time. This was at the wedding. We posed some pictures up on the altar, and I took the pictures, and I say, okay, thank you. Go inside and have a good time. That's when I shoot. That's when I'm looking, because nobody's aware. You know, they've already posed for pictures, so I'm just going to shoot and see what happens. And that's what happened here. So when you dismiss them, keep an eye on them and keep shooting. This wedding I shot about a week ago. And I was not the photographer on this. One of my students in a seminar, he was the photographer that was hired. And I explained to him, Alex, I said, if I'm in your way, just knock me out of your way. I said, I'm a guest here. He said, no, I want you to shoot. And I said, no, this is your wedding. And so I just shot ancillary stuff and had a good time. Again, I love looking for that sense of mystery of what the hell's going on here. You know, there are times where you're not there to explain your photographs. You want to involve the viewer and have the viewer question what's going on here. And once the viewer says what's going on here, you got it. You've done your job. Now here's a situation where you know, the woman in the foreground who's blocking the key woman in the back, I can't move. If I move a little bit, I eliminate the woman in the mirror. So I got to make a decision quickly and shoot. Now, I'm pointing that glass right at that woman's face, but that's not her face in the glass. It's the guy's face in the glass upside down. And that's what happens when you shoot through water. You don't know what the hell you're going to get. My cousin Jeff Coviello. I left all that empty space for you, man.
No, I was just. And you also have the classic triangle.
Yeah.
So I mean.
Again, what is she doing? You know, what the heck is she doing? She's just looking at it? The truth is, she had sprayed some perfume on it, and the bride was about to smell it. But I wasn't interested. I wasn't interested in her getting her nose close to that arm. I wanted it back a little bit because it sets up a mystery. What's going on here? Again, whenever there's a mosh pit, you better be in the middle of it. You got to be taking pictures in these things. Here's the priest. It's at a Greek wedding. I love this wedding. It's a Greek wedding. And the bride is entranced by the Greek who say, well, we have to do this and then we have to do that. And there I am grabbing this stuff. This is the triumph of this wedding. Again, I wasn't the photographer at this wedding. This other fellow was. But I was privileged because I was at their home. And here's the grandfather and the granddaughter together. You know, this picture, for me, The reason I like it so much is this picture is going to be around while this girl is showing this to her children and say, this was my grandfather, this is your great-grandfather. And it's a situation where we were both crying. It's the same wedding. But you look for situations like that. You really want these situations. You know, and you can't be afraid to take them. I'm warning you, don't be afraid to take these things. You know, you may be a little timid about it, but learn not to be. You know, there's a wonderful, remember the old sitcom called Barney Miller? I don't know if any of you remember it, sure. Barney Miller was a cop situation type show, and it was a comedy more than it was a cop show. And he had a bunch of cops that would go out and bring different suspects in. And Steve Landisberg, a comedian who was one of the characters on the show, comes into the precinct with an Indian. And Barney Miller says, what's going on? He says, I picked him up for loitering. Really? He said, where was he? He says, in the park. He said, why was he loitering in the park? He said, well, the American Indian believes that wherever they are is the center of the universe, unless you happen to live in Jersey. But the point there is, you are the center of the universe. You are. So you have every right to go up there and take that picture. That's what your raison d'etre is to get in these moments and not let anybody deter you. If they look up and they say, oh, don't do that, you know, I don't like you for doing that, and you say, well, you apologize and you move along. You don't do it again. But 9 out of 10 times, you're at a wedding, everybody's joyful, everybody's happy. Well, you can't get any closer to this guy, you know, and, well, I can't say anything more about that. You know what I love about this woman? I know this woman quite well, and she has one of my favorite Italian names. Her name is Carla Bacigalupo. And in Italian, Bacigalupo means kiss the wolf. But kiss the wolf is not nearly as euphonic as Bacigalupo. I love that name. And she's a great lady. And this is her wonderful daughter. Wedding photograph? Actually, yes. They were up at a camp, and we were there for 2 days, and the guys were goofing around. They'd play soccer, they'd play basketball. So this is all part of this wedding. It's not going to be in the wedding album, but they wanted this photograph anyway, so they loved it. You know these, Amy? You know who these kids are? This is where, if you're good, you're going to be lucky once in a while. Look at the girl behind it. See that diamond over her eye like that? That happens. I didn't see it. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say, oh, I saw that and I'm good. No, that was a happy accident and it worked in my favor. This is my daughter, and this, like I said, I love it when a hand interrupts, you know, the frame, because just it adds another element to make it interesting. See what happens when you get close, how physical the pictures are? That's Melissa's family, Brandon. Her sister. Again. Go ahead, what are you thinking?
It looks like his finger is sending out a flare right to the cigar.
Good enough. Good enough. That's for you. Me, they look like two hitmen, you know?
That might be.
If I can be bold enough to say, this reminds me of something Brassai might have taken in a cafe in Paris, you know. I think the thing that pleases me most about it is this is not natural light, though I tried to make it look as much like natural light as possible by burning stuff. It was a windy day. Dress was blowing all over the place, but it was hard to really control it in a photograph. So I asked someone, one of the bridesmaids, I said, pull the dress up and just hold it up. And then I moved in and it worked. You know, once in a while you have to control it. Again, it's that hand that interests me. Otherwise, you know, it's all right. But now it makes it more interesting. Say, what the heck is going on here? What is that hand signaling? Again, I enjoy being discovered. You know, when you walk into a room and then everybody turns around and looks. I got to play once in a while, you know. So I go in Photoshop and just start mucking about and whatever. I don't know if it works, if it doesn't work, but like I said, you got to play once in a while. And when you see legs that beautiful, you really have to take a picture of them. Now, wedding is going on, everybody's outside, okay? So I'm not going to photograph when people are eating. I disappear, I go into the bar. But yet I'm anxious, I want to shoot something. And there's this table with flowers on it. So I move it around, I shoot it with natural light, I push my film with the card to 1600, and just make some interesting little moments. And this is what I mean by that heroic angle of shooting up. Here's where Photoshop comes in. The guy and the woman dancing, that's fine. But I needed more dimension. And what I did was I lightened that up, the roof, and all these little sparkles, I lightened them up. I just had to have some energy in there because it wasn't enough. Here's where I erased a lot of stuff. I cropped the photo because the hairdresser's expression was nothing. There was no expression there that worked for me. But the girl's beautiful, and the light is beautiful on her. So I cropped it, and then I erased whatever little things were around there, just to have that black backdrop, if you will, and just the minimalist proportions. Again, drag the shutter and have some fun. They almost look like they fell off the top of the cake, you know? It's a really interesting scale. That's the Cohen family, Brandon. Melissa's mother and father, really lovely people. Gibby and Patty Cohen. Here's the woman that was hired to shoot the wedding. See, and she's got that thing over the top of her camera. I guess it softens the light. I don't even know. But I don't want something that's going to grab the attention. I want to keep it as simple as possible. By shooting with the wide-angle lens and moving in, I get you in there. You're part of these four guys. You're the fifth element. Don't be afraid to move in. You're just as important as the subjects. There was something about this, you know. Normally I don't tone photographs, but it seemed to have an antique quality to it. So I warmed it up just a bit, not a lot. And I love, if people are milling about, I love walking into the middle of that milling and letting them come past me, you know, and I'm shooting on either side, and I'm shooting quickly. So I'm not, I don't know if I'm seeing everything. I think I am instinctively, but I want to be in there close, and you get things like that. Here's a guy you don't want to take more than one picture of, you know. I think I got it on the first one. I said, that's about it. Tough picture. I didn't want to take it. And yet, at one time, I wanted to take it very badly. This is the bride's mother. And she was struggling with cancer. And she was literally on her last legs. She made a very brave effort to be there at the wedding. And when she saw me with the camera, she looked up and she said, "Take whatever you want." And I did. I took one picture. I wasn't going to belabor it, but I wanted that one picture. I wanted the bride to see that one picture. It's not something you can get overjoyed about, but it's something historically that goes down to the grandchildren, and you say, this was your grandmother. She was dying, but yet she still came to the wedding, and you can see the pain that she was going through. I love these little consolations, you know, when people are consoling each other for one thing or another. I don't even know what was going on there. Again, you got to be ready. Nobody sets this up. The wind blows. You better be quick. I had a drink, a water. I don't drink, so I had a glass of water in my hand. And I'm just looking around through things, and I held the glass up, and I saw the bride in it. I said, oh, what a great shot. So you take the shot. See, the glass is out of focus. I don't care. I mean, I know it's a glass, you know it's a glass, but the girl is in focus. She's crisp because she's much further back. And I'm in focus from 3 feet to infinity. So I know she's going to be sharp because she's somewhere between 3 feet and infinity. Again, here, I eliminated some of the stuff in the background that I felt distracting because I just wanted the bride and groom, but I love that little triangle element because it sets up, again, a question of, gee, what is that? Why is it there? Anybody know Jay Maisel? You know Jay Maisel? This is Jay Maisel and Larry Fink in the background. I got the bride and the bridesmaids all on the porch. I said, okay, girls. I said, nothing fancy, don't move. Just stay where you are and look at the camera. No expression, just look at the camera. You don't have to look sad, you don't have to put on a mask. Just, your countenance is what I'm interested in. Just look at the camera. And for me, it's a very strong shot. And I like the fact that it's not formal, everybody's lined up. Anybody use a Holga? One, oh boy. Holga's a lot of fun. They're plastic cameras, and they have all kinds of imperfections, light leaks and scratches and things like that. And this girl that I'm photographing, she's a photographer. So I told her, I said, Mel, I'm going to shoot with the Holga. Not everything, I'm going to use the Leica, but some pictures I'm going to use the Holga. And that's what came out. We're down in Princeton, I set up a few pictures, we took some pictures. I say, okay, come on, let's move to another spot. And I just say that to see them break up. I don't move. I wait for them to start moving, and then I'm going to shoot. Here you have your choice. Where do you focus? You focus on the foreground, the girl, or the girl in the mirror? See those hands? Don't miss them if you got an opportunity. Long lens. It's the only one of the few shots with a long lens, but it really worked very nicely. That's the younger generation. You love it when they're silly. You know what almost goes unnoticed in here is the hand on the girl's back, you know, trying to get her attention. I love today's generation where they all use bubbles at weddings. You know what a triptych is? Diptych? Most of you know what it is? This is a triptych. I love triptychs. I love diptychs too, but triptychs are even better. What it is, if you look at the Renaissance paintings, you generally see 2 or 3 panels describing different things. And that happens here. I've got the mirror, the one girl that's consoling the bride. So you've got 3 different pictures. And just the juxtaposition of this woman blowing a bubble and this poor guy behind it, you know, in a stressful state. This picture almost should be in color because this fella, Spadavecchia, has the most beautiful blue eyes. I mean, it's an incredibly light blue eyes. That's my daughter, and that's my hand. I'm trying to spread out the veil so I can shoot through it. And I'm holding the camera back here so I can keep 3 feet away from her. And I just fired. So, and that's why I'm saying to you guys, break the rules. I mean, you say, oh, you got your arm in there, wait until you get that out. Break the rules. See, it may be a more interesting moment. How do you beat that? The groom's brother is all broken up. Yeah, this is, I photographed his daughter's wedding. This guy was one of the nicest people I've ever worked with. And I've worked with a lot of celebrities. But he couldn't have been more of a gentleman. His wife was spectacular. His kids were all great. They treated me royally. And I enjoyed shooting that wedding. Now, this is, I don't know if you take it seriously or not. I don't take it all that seriously, but I like doing it. So I take a bunch of pictures, I find a song in my head, and I go, geez, I'd love to use that song. It had to be in color. You know, I converted it to black and white, and there was nothing there. The color made it. And one of the reasons it makes it, it's not all that distracting, the color. No pop flash, natural light, and it's beautiful. Bride's beautiful. You know, I looked at this as I was shooting it, and I'm seeing these lights on the ceiling. I said, I'm not going to convert that. I'm just going to leave it with the color because the color's nice in there. The old line is a great old line with Groucho Marx in one of his movies. He's dancing with this woman. She goes, hold me closer, seductively. So he pulls her in, he goes closer. He pulls her in, she goes closer. He goes, if I was any closer to you, I'd be in back of you. Right. It's the same thing here. If I get any closer to this girl, I'd be behind her. This was the setup. I'm walking through the living room, and I see this light coming in this window. I said, I've got to put somebody in that light. I bring out the bride and her sister, stand there, just look at the camera. It's like the other one you saw, but, you know, in color. Again, this is so diffused, this light, it was so pretty.
For more information, please visit us online, give us a call, or stop by our New York City Superstore. You can also connect with us on the web.